In the Kalen Balazs scouting report video, I talked about how some of the analytics guys, like the ones at Pro Football Focus, seem to be really, really high on him, and I just didn't get it. Dude couldn't even be the primary ball carrier for his team, but you're rating him so highly and talking about going into his last college season, he's the top returning graded running back. It's like, to me, is a perfect example of the flaws in the analytics grading sometimes. I mean, real talk. I feel like when it comes to the analytics type stuff, it sometimes is better suited for the NFL than it is for college football, and taking those grades and assuming that that translates to the NFL. Because many times it does not. Sometimes it can, but it feels like a lot of times it does not. It has led to them overrating players massively that just didn't deserve it, or massively underrating guys because they didn't grade well, and it seemed like ignoring their projectivity in terms of their athletic upside, you know, the room they had to grow in their game, and so forth. The reason I bring that up is I look at Michael Gallup, the wide receiver from Colorado State, and here's a guy that it feels like the Pro Football Focus crew and a lot of the analytics types guys are pretty big on, based off of what I've seen. And my reality is somewhat different. I'm not as high on him as they are, and I just don't really, when I watch him, I don't really see why others would be really high on him. I mean, granted, he's technically got enough size to be able to play outside, but he could also potentially be effective in the slot. I've seen him make some big-time spectacular catches, show the ability to come back to the football, adjust to the football, again, make those tough catches. He can be effective in the routes that he does run. I mean, so while not having the most expansive route tree, he's effective with what he does run. So maybe if you can improve in that area, he can run more routes and be close to as equally effective. You've got a much better wide receiver. He's really good after the catch. I will definitely give him that. He's not a super explosive guy, but he's a guy that plays with some edge. He plays with some attitude, physicality. He's a guy that will be able to break some tackles by running through them with effort. And we know with wide receivers, sometimes, especially when the guys are stars and are big paid, sometimes they want to play hard and sometimes they do not. And sometimes that's okay. You don't want your big-time wide receiver that you're paying a ton of money to take a bunch of unnecessary shots. But I look at Gallup, and I see a guy that is willing to mix it up. He plays with a general competitiveness and a fire that I really like out of prospects. You know, to me, if a guy plays with great passion, fire, competitiveness, that goes a long, long way to them being able to make it, because you figure that translates into working hard, taking the craft seriously, giving max effort when they're playing. Those guys tend to, it seems like, be rewarded. They tend to achieve what they should have, if not overachieve. It's the guys that don't play with an edge, fire, consistency of motor and effort level and hustle that I really worry about, because they try to cherry pick in the NFL in terms of picking and choosing their spots where they give a crap and think it's going to be the same as it was in college, and it just isn't. And those guys get exposed and they get eaten alive. Well, you don't have to worry about that with Michael Gallup. I also think in terms of him, why he could project as a true starting outside wide receiver in the NFL is because of how he chooses to want to try and be a run blocker. He's somewhat effective. I feel like he can get more effective in time. But again, in college, how much did you really want Michael Gallup to run block? But he was a willing and somewhat able run blocker. So there's definitely a baseline of things that you look at with him and you say, okay, he could play outside in the NFL. He could be a starter in the NFL. And I don't disagree with that assertion. But there's a difference between being like a baseline, moderate, average, number 2 NFL wide receiver to being a big-time superstar number 1 type of guy. And for that type of talent, I just don't see it in Michael Gallup. He's got just average size, average quickness, average speed. And when you look at when he ran in the 40 at the Combine, he was a 4.51 guy. And frankly, sometimes I don't even feel like that level of speed showed up on film. But it's average. It doesn't suck, but it's not great. If he was 6'5", 220 and he ran that, that's great. He's 6'1", it's not as great. He also, when you talk about making the big-time spectacular catches, which is great, he had quite a few bad drops, and he wasn't always great at catching the ball cleanly. I don't care how many great catches you can make at times. If you drop a lot of the easy ones and you drop those really important basic ones, that other stuff really isn't going to matter. It's going to get you in the coach's doghouse, and it's just going to lead to the quarterback not trusting you in big spots when he really needs it. And Gallup, for every spectacular catch he made, it felt like he had an equally spectacularly bad drop based off of what I saw. Also, his route tree is not very expansive. It's smallish. He's choppy in terms of the quality of routes in general. I know I said he can be effective on the routes that he runs. He can be effective at the college level, but his footwork is choppy. His upper body, I don't think, is the best in terms of being synced with his lower body and setting up what he does. He could use his arms and his hands and his shoulders better. He struggles against physical press coverage. Again, imagine that. How many of these damn receivers in this draft class don't? And frankly, a lot of guys in the NFL do too. But he really struggles against it, which is a concern to me because talking about a guy with average size, average quickness, average speed, not the most precise and crisp route runner with a limited route tree, now you can get up on him. It feels like he's a guy that could potentially really struggle to get open on a consistent basis. And if guys can't separate or figure out ways to get that subtle separation, like some of the bigger guys that are able to go up and get the ball at the highest point, and they're able to utilize their hands subtly, which we call push-offs, but we don't call pass interference. If he can't adjust and play that bigger man's type of style, he could really struggle. So, like I say, even with some of the things I look at that are very positive about him and make me feel like he can play at the NFL level, I just really have questions about what his actual true upside is. Because overall, he's a really good run-after-catch type of guy, but he's not really great in any other areas. He's not necessarily terrible in any other areas. He's just kind of average to maybe slightly above average in a lot of places. That's kind of who he is. A lot of average traits about his game, and I wonder just how much room for improvement there are in some of these places and how much there's going to be in terms of room to grow. Now, he is still a bit raw. Coming from the JUCO route, he has time potentially to get better, room to grow, but what is truly his upside with the average size, average quickness, average speed, some of the struggles he has with route running, some of the struggles he has with consistently catching the football. And I really struggle to, outside of his run after catch ability, which doesn't matter much if you can't get open and actually get the ball, I really struggle to see what his NFL trait is going to be, that kind of go-to thing. Like, what's that go-to thing? Like, I look at an Antonio Brown, it's that superior route running ability. When I look at a guy like Julio Jones, he's just freaking big and athletic and freakish, and that's his go-to thing. AJ Green, lesser to a degree with Julio Jones, but still big, tall, fast. He can get up and get the ball at its highest point. Odell Beckham Jr., its quickness, its speed, its explosiveness, and the ability to make great plays and go get the ball wherever it is. They all have those go-to type of traits. Like even some of the lesser, the wannabe number ones that are really number twos, like an Alshon Jeffrey. I throw him out there because at least you can say his go-to trait is his size, and you can go throw the ball up to him, and he can go get it at its highest point. He might not get the one that's thrown directly at his numbers. That's the worst place you could throw it to him. Throw him the bullshit that's 3 feet above his damn head and watch him go get it. That's his go-to trait. What is Michael Gallup's go-to trait? And that's, to me, the question that he has to answer if he wants to become a really productive NFL wide receiver, if he just wants to become kind of a rotational, a nice, solid possession number 2 type of guy. My NFL comparison for him is Robert Woods. Similar type of guy. Not the biggest, not the quickest, not the fastest. I thought Robert Woods was a little more well-rounded as a prospect coming out of USC in that 2013 draft class. If I remember correctly, I was actually quite high on him, and obviously I was pretty wrong. I mean, he's become a productive NFL player, and he will occasionally have that flash in a really good game, but he's not a game changer. He's not a difference maker. He will never be a number 1 type of guy. He is best suited as a guy in the rotation as a number 2 possession type of wide receiver. And that's kind of what I envision Michael Gallup as being. My grade on him, 84.5. I feel like he's kind of a mid-third round tout. He's kind of in that similar range with the Cortland Suttons and James Washingtons of the world. Guys that have a bit of a reputation in terms of people have been talking about him for a while, including Gallup, even playing at Colorado State. He's been getting some buzz and stuff. But I feel like the reality is that it's hard to see where their college production translates to the NFL. And that's where I might divest from the analytics folks' belief that Michael Gallup could be a first-round type of talent. And look at him and I say, no, he's more a mid to late day 2 type of guy, realistically. And I wonder if he is really even that.